On my son's birthday, my wife refused to let my family come, claiming she hated them. From the very first moment, a heavy tension filled the house. I had envisioned a day full of laughter, decorations, and the warm presence of both sides of our families. Instead, I was met with cold resistance and frustration. I tried to reason with her. "It's just one day," I said. "For our son, it's important that he feels surrounded by love from everyone who cares about him." She shook her head. "They make me uncomfortable. I don't want to be around them," she replied firmly, her eyes avoiding mine. Her words cut deeper than I expected, and I realized there was no easy compromise here. Days before the birthday, the tension at home escalated. Every conversation about the celebration turned into arguments. Planning the party became a nightmare. I found myself constantly walking on eggshells, unsure what might trigger her anger. Even simple things like choosing a cake or sending invitations became points of contention. I watched my son play innocently, oblivious to the storm brewing around him. His laughter made me feel guilty. He deserved joy, not stress caused by adults. I kept wondering if there was a way to make everyone happy, or if this was just the beginning of more conflicts to come. The days leading up to my son's birthday were some of the most stressful I had ever experienced. Every attempt to discuss the celebration with my wife seemed to ignite a new argument. I suggested compromises, smaller gatherings, meeting halfway, keeping my family at a distance, but she rejected each idea without hesitation. I could feel the tension in the air every time we were in the same room. Even mundane tasks like shopping, for decorations, or deciding on the menu became battles. I wanted everything to be perfect for our son, but it felt like the more I tried, the worse the situation became. Late at night, I found myself pacing around the living room, wondering how it had come to this. Was it possible to celebrate this special day without causing a bigger rift in our marriage? I wanted my son to have happy memories, yet I also wanted to respect my wife's feelings, though I didn't fully understand why she felt so strongly. Kataki. Atmosphere at home grew heavy. My son started noticing the tension, asking questions I wasn't ready to answer. He didn't understand why his parents were upset with each other, and it broke my heart to see his joy clouded by adult conflicts. Every day, I felt trapped between wanting to honor my family and wanting to keep peace with my wife. I knew that whatever I decided next could change not only the birthday, but the dynamics of our home for months to come. As the birthday approached, the tension at home became almost unbearable. My wife and I barely spoke without our conversations, turning into arguments. Even small things, like choosing the color of balloons or picking out party favors, felt like a battlefield. I wanted to create a joyful environment for our son, but every step I took seemed to push my wife further away. I began to notice subtle changes in my son's behavior. He would ask questions about why mommy and daddy were upset or why he couldn't see certain family members. His innocent curiosity pierced my heart. I tried to reassure him, but deep down, I knew I couldn't explain everything. Friends and relatives called, excited to join the celebration, and I felt torn between making excuses and telling the truth. Each call reminded me of the growing distance between my wife and my family. I spent long nights thinking, wondering if there was a solution that wouldn't hurt anyone, or if I was heading toward a day full of disappointment. I even considered postponing the celebration, but my son's excitement made me hesitate. His joy was pure, and I didn't want it overshadowed by adult conflicts. Every time I looked at him, I felt a mix of guilt, frustration, and helplessness. The house was quiet at night, but the storm of emotions never seemed to settle. I realized that this birthday wasn't just about presents or cake. It was about family, love, and navigating the complex balance between two worlds that sometimes clashed too violently. The day of my son's birthday finally arrived, but the house felt strangely tense. Decorations hung in place, the cake sat on the table, and gifts were neatly wrapped, but the air was heavy with unspoken arguments and resentment. I could see my wife moving around with a rigid expression, avoiding any conversation about family or the guests who might come. I tried to focus on my son, encouraging him to enjoy his special day, but it was impossible to ignore the tension. He laughed and ran around the living room, completely unaware of the storm brewing between the adults. Each smile he gave me was both a blessing and a reminder of how delicate the situation had become. I made a last effort to talk to my wife, hoping for some compromise, some middle ground. "Maybe we could invite them for just an hour?" I suggested, trying to sound calm. She shook her head, her lips pressed tight. "No, I can't do it. They make me feel unwelcome," she said, firmly, leaving me with no choice but to hold my frustration inside. Even as the morning turned into afternoon, I noticed how the tension was affecting everyone. My son asked questions, my wife grew more distant, and I felt caught in the middle of a battle I hadn't expected. I realized that this birthday was no longer just about celebration. It had become a test of patience, understanding, and the limits of compromise in a marriage strained by conflicting loyalties. As the day progressed, the tension in the house grew heavier. Every little sound seemed amplified. The laughter of my son, the clatter of dishes, even the ticking of the clock. I tried to focus on the celebration, but the atmosphere made it nearly impossible. My wife moved around quietly, avoiding eye contact, her silence speaking louder than words. I found myself constantly thinking about my family. My parents, my siblings, they were excited to see my son, and I couldn't help but feel guilty for having to exclude them. At the same time, I understood my wife's feelings, though I struggled to comprehend the depth of her resentment. I was caught between two worlds, both important, yet seemingly irreconcilable. My son, oblivious to the adult tension, asked for stories, games, and songs. His innocent excitement clashed painfully with the heaviness surrounding him. Every smile he gave was bittersweet, reminding me that this day should have been pure joy, yet had become a reflection of grown-up conflicts. I attempted again to speak with my wife, suggesting small compromises, subtle gestures that could ease the tension. Each suggestion was met with resistance. "I just can't," she repeated, her voice quiet but firm. I realized that words alone weren't enough to bridge the gap that had formed between us. As the hours passed, I felt a strange mix of frustration, helplessness, and determination. I wanted to protect my son's happiness, maintain peace in our marriage, and somehow reconcile two sides that seemed destined to clash. Yet every decision I faced felt heavier than the last. The day moved slowly, each moment stretching longer than it should. I could sense that this birthday wasn't just about cake or presents. It was a turning point, a test of patience, understanding, and the limits of compromise. And I knew deep down that the challenges of this day were far from over. By the end of the day, the tension in the house had reached its peak. My son had enjoyed his birthday, but the conflicts between my wife and my family had left a shadow over the celebration. I realized that some things couldn't be solved overnight, and compromise required time, patience, and understanding. We ended the day quietly, reflecting on what had happened. Despite the arguments and hurt feelings, I knew one thing for sure. My son's happiness was the most important. And while challenges in relationships were inevitable, love and communication would always be the key to moving forward. It wasn't a perfect day, but it was a lesson, a reminder that family, marriage, and parenting are full of difficult choices. And sometimes the hardest battles are the ones fought silently behind closed doors. And so our story ends today. But in the world of Max Fables, every story carries a lesson and leaves an impact. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss our upcoming stories. Here, where stories come to life.